They say some meetings are written in destiny. Others are written in blood. On the night of March 14, 2019, security cameras inside Murphy's Diner in Newark, New Jersey captured something that would later be reviewed by FBI agents over 40 times. The footage shows a man in an expensive charcoal suit entering through the front door at exactly 11:47 p.m. His name was Antonio DeLuca, and he was the most feared organized crime boss on the East Coast. The cameras captured him walking slowly past empty booths, his eyes scanning the room with the precision of someone trained to notice threats. Then he stopped, right in front of a young black waitress named Maya Roberts who was wiping down table 7 for the third time that shift. What happened next left investigators confused for months. Why did a man who ordered executions with a phone call walk into a diner at midnight? Why did he approach a woman he had never met? And why did he leave her a $1,000 tip with a single sentence scribbled on the receipt? Meet me tomorrow night, 8 p.m., Rossi's Cafe. Your life depends on it. This is the story of how one ordinary night shift became a fight for survival, and how two people from completely different worlds found themselves bound together by a secret that could destroy the entire criminal underworld of New Jersey. Because that date they went on wasn't just about dinner. It was about staying alive. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Antonio Michael DeLuca didn't start his life as a monster. He started it as a boy in a 3-bedroom apartment in South Philly, the youngest of 2 brothers in a family that ran a small Italian restaurant. His father Sal worked the kitchen while his mother Maria handled the books. By the time Antonio was 10, he knew the difference between the customers who came for pasta and the ones who came to discuss business in the back room. His older brother Michael was different. Michael had dreams of going straight, of becoming a lawyer and getting the family out of the neighborhood. He was 22 when he made the mistake of testifying as a witness in a federal case against the Rossini crime family. Antonio was 17 when he found Michael's body in the trunk of a burned-out Cadillac 3 blocks from their house. The killers had made it look like a message, and the message was received. Antonio's father had a heart attack 2 weeks later. His mother stopped speaking for a year. And Antonio, the quiet younger brother who used to draw comic books in the margins of his school notebooks, made a decision. If his family had been destroyed because they didn't have power, he would get power. If they had been hurt because they didn't have protection, he would become the protector. Within 5 years, Antonio had worked his way up through the ranks of the DeLuca organization, named after his family, but controlled by men who respected only violence and loyalty. By 30, he had eliminated his rivals and taken control. He became known for 3 things: his ability to stay calm under pressure, his refusal to involve civilians in mob business, and his absolute enforcement of the code. You didn't talk. You didn't betray. You didn't put innocent people in danger. Break the code and you didn't get a second chance. But there was something else people didn't know about Antonio DeLuca. Late at night, when his men had gone home and the city was quiet, he would sit in his office and wonder what his brother Michael would think of him now. He had power. He had protection. He had everything except the one thing his brother died trying to preserve: a clean conscience. Maya Janelle Roberts was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, in a neighborhood where gunshots were background noise and corner stores had bulletproof glass at the counter. Her mother died of cancer when Maya was 19, leaving her to raise her younger brother Marcus alone. Marcus was 13 now and smart, the kind of kid who stayed after school for math club and talked about going to college. Maya worked double shifts at Murphy's Diner 6 days a week to keep them in their 1-bedroom apartment and keep Marcus in clean clothes and tutoring sessions. She had her own dreams once. Before her mother got sick, Maya had been 2 semesters away from finishing her nursing degree. She had a plan, a future, a belief that hard work could lift you out of circumstances you were born into. But life had other plans. Now, at 28, her dreams lived in a folder under her bed, along with old textbooks and acceptance letters she never got to use. Maya was the kind of person people underestimated. She was soft-spoken and kind, always patient with difficult customers, always remembering regulars by name. But underneath that gentleness was something else. a spine made of steel, a refusal to break even when everything around her was breaking. She had seen too much to be naive and lost too much to take anything for granted. When men tried to intimidate her, she looked them in the eye and didn't flinch. When customers got loud, she stayed calm. And when life knocked her down, she got back up because Marcus was watching and she refused to let him see her quit. On the night of March 14th, Maya Roberts had exactly $87 in her bank account, a gas bill that was 2 weeks overdue, and a 13-year-old brother who needed new shoes. She had no idea that the man in the expensive suit walking through the door of Murphy's Diner at 11:47 p.m. was about to change everything. She had no idea that her life was already in danger. And she had no idea that her late father, the man she thought worked construction jobs and died in an accident when she was 7, had a secret that people were still willing to kill for 21 years later. The diner was almost empty when Antonio walked in. Just 2 truckers at the counter drinking coffee and a teenage couple in the corner booth trying to make a plate of fries last another hour. Maya noticed him immediately because men like him didn't usually come into Murphy's. His suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months. His shoes were polished. His watch caught the overhead lights. But it wasn't the clothes that made her pay attention. It was the way he moved. Careful. Controlled. Like someone who expected trouble and was ready for it. He sat down at a booth by the window and Maya approached with her notepad, forcing a polite smile despite the exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders. She had been on her feet for 9 hours and her shift didn't end for another 2. "Can I get you something?" she asked. Antonio looked up at her and for a moment he didn't speak. He just studied her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Then he said, "Coffee. Black. No sugar." Maya nodded and turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "What's your name?" She hesitated. The question felt too personal for a customer she had never met. "My name tag says Maya," she replied carefully. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. Maya Roberts, 28 years old. Lives on Cypress Avenue with her younger brother Marcus. Works 6 days a week to pay rent and keep the lights on. Her blood went cold. "How do you know that?" Antonio's expression didn't change. "Sit down," he said quietly. "We need to talk." "I'm working," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady even though her heart was pounding. "This is more important than your shift." She glanced toward the kitchen where the cook was scraping the grill. She thought about walking away, about calling the police, about screaming for help. But something in Antonio's eyes stopped her. He didn't look threatening. He looked serious, urgent, almost concerned. "You're in danger," he said, "and I'm the only reason you're still alive." Maya's legs felt weak. She slid into the seat across from him, her hands trembling slightly as she set down her notepad. "What are you talking about?" "Your father," Antonio said. "Raymond Roberts. You think he died in a construction accident in 1998. He didn't. Raymond Roberts was an undercover federal agent embedded in the Castellano crime family. He spent 3 years collecting evidence, names, transactions, everything the FBI needed to take down one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the East Coast. And then, 3 days before he was supposed to testify, he disappeared. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "That's not true. My father worked construction. He died when a scaffold collapsed." "He didn't die in an accident," Antonio said flatly. "He was murdered. But before they killed him, he hid something. A ledger. A little black book with names, dates, bank accounts, everything that could destroy what's left of the families operating in this region. And the people who killed your father think you know where it is." Maya couldn't breathe. Her father's face flashed through her mind. The way he used to carry her on his shoulders. The way he smelled like sawdust and coffee. The way her mother cried at his funeral and never really stopped. "You're lying," she whispered. "I wish I was," Antonio said. 2 weeks ago, a contract was put out on you. Someone from the old Castellano network found out Raymond Roberts had a daughter and they want to know what you know. I've been tracking the situation because I don't do business this way. Civilians don't get touched. That's the rule. But not everyone follows the rules anymore. Why would you help me?" Maya demanded. "You're one of them. You're a criminal." Antonio leaned back, his jaw tight. Because 20 years ago, my brother testified against the Rossini family. They killed him for it. He was trying to do the right thing and they murdered him in the street. I didn't have the power to protect him then. But I have it now. And I'm not going to let what happened to Michael happen to someone else. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to run, wanted this to be some kind of sick joke. But the look in his eyes told her it wasn't. How do I know you're telling the truth? Check your apartment, Antonio said. Check the alley behind your building. You'll see a black sedan with tinted windows parked there every night for the past 5 days. They're watching you, waiting for the right moment. And if I hadn't put my own people on your block to keep them back, you'd already be gone. Maya's stomach turned. She thought about Marcus, about the way he walked home from school alone, about the way she left him with neighbors when she worked nights. If you're trying to scare me, it's working. Good, Antonio said. Fear will keep you alive. Meet me tomorrow night at 8 p.m. at Rossi's Cafe on 8th Street. We'll figure out what to do next. And don't tell anyone. Not your friends, not your neighbors, not the police. The people looking for you have eyes everywhere. He stood up, pulled a wad of cash from his pocket, and placed $100 bills on the table along with a napkin with an address scribbled on it. That'll cover your rent and your brother's shoes, he said quietly. See you tomorrow. And then he was gone, leaving Maya sitting in a diner booth at midnight, staring at more money than she had seen in 6 months, and wondering if her entire life had just been turned upside down by a man she didn't even know. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch with the lights off, staring at the window, listening for sounds in the hallway. At 2 a.m., she checked the alley behind the building. The black sedan was there. Just like Antonio said. She felt her chest tighten. The next morning she dropped Marcus off at school and made him promise to stay inside until she picked him up. He complained, asking why she was acting so paranoid. But she didn't have an answer that wouldn't terrify him. That evening, at 7:45 p.m., Maya walked into Rossi's Cafe. It was a small Italian place with checkered tablecloths and candles on every table. Antonio was already there, sitting in a back corner booth away from the windows. He stood when she approached. Thank you for coming. I didn't have much of a choice, Maya said, sliding into the seat across from him. A waitress brought water and bread. Antonio waited until she left before speaking. I've been looking into your father's case. The FBI closed the file 20 years ago, but there are people who never stopped looking for that ledger. If we can find it first, we can end this. And how exactly do we do that? Maya asked. You start by telling me everything you remember about your father. His habits, his hiding places, anything that seemed unusual before he died. Maya shook her head. I was 7 years old. I barely remember him. Try, Antonio said gently. It might save your life. So Maya tried. She talked about the small apartment they lived in, about her father's toolbox, about the way he used to take her to the park on Sundays. She talked about the jacket he always wore, a faded denim one with a tear in the sleeve. She talked about how her mother packed up all his things after the funeral and donated most of it to Goodwill. Then she stopped. Wait, what? Antonio leaned forward. There was one thing my mom didn't donate, Maya said slowly. His jacket. She kept it in a box in the closet. I found it a few years ago when I was looking for old photos. It's still at my apartment. Antonio's eyes sharpened. We need to get it. Now. They left the cafe and drove to Maya's building in Antonio's car. A black Mercedes with tinted windows. He parked 2 blocks away and they walked the rest of the distance. Antonio scanning every car, every shadow, every window. Inside the apartment, Maya pulled the box from the closet. The jacket was folded carefully at the bottom, still smelling faintly of her father's cologne after all these years. She held it up, running her hands over the pockets. There's nothing here, she said. Check the lining, Antonio said. Maya felt along the seams and then her fingers touched something hard. A tear in the inner lining. She reached inside and pulled out a small black notebook, no bigger than a deck of cards. Oh my God, she whispered. That's it, Antonio said quietly. That's what they've been looking for. Maya opened the ledger with shaking hands. Inside were pages and pages of names, dates, locations, transactions, bank account numbers, offshore holdings, Payoffs to judges, police officers, politicians. It was a map of corruption that stretched across 2 decades. This could destroy people, Maya said. Could save people too, Antonio replied. Your father didn't die for nothing. He died trying to protect you and your mother by hiding this. Now we can finish what he started. How? Maya asked. By turning it over to the FBI, Antonio said. But not just any agent. Someone I trust. Someone who's been working to take down the families for years without getting killed. You know an FBI agent? Maya asked, surprised. Antonio's expression was unreadable. I've been working with them for the past 18 months. I'm an informant. Maya stared at him. What? Everything I've done, every move I've made for the past year and a half, has been to gather evidence against the people who killed my brother. I'm not trying to run the criminal underworld. I'm trying to burn it down. But you're a mob boss, Maya said, her voice rising. You run an entire organization. And when this is over, that organization is going into federal custody along with every name in that book, Antonio said. I'll go into witness protection. I'll disappear. But first, I had to make sure the people who hurt innocent families like yours couldn't do it again. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. Why didn't you just tell me that from the start? Because I needed you to trust me first, Antonio said. And because the fewer people who knew, the safer you were. A noise outside made them both freeze. Antonio moved to the window and looked down at the street. His face went pale. We need to leave. Now, what's wrong? They found us. Antonio grabbed Maya's hand and pulled her toward the back door of the apartment. But before they could reach it, the front door exploded inward. 3 men in black masks rushed inside, guns drawn. Antonio shoved Maya behind him and pulled a pistol from his coat. Federal agents, he shouted. Drop your weapons. The men hesitated, confused. That's when Antonio fired a single shot into the ceiling and the building's fire alarm went off. Chaos erupted. Doors opened up and down the hallway as neighbors poured out. Antonio used the confusion to pull Maya through the crowd and down the back stairwell. They hit the street running. Behind them, the masked men were shouting, trying to push through the crowd. Antonio led Maya to a car parked 3 blocks away and threw her into the passenger seat. Where are we going? Maya gasped. Somewhere safe, Antonio said, pulling out his phone. He dialed a number. It's DeLuca. I need an extraction team at the 8th Street safe house in 20 minutes. We have the ledger and we're blown. Bring federal backup. They drove through Newark in tense silence, Antonio checking the mirrors every few seconds. Finally, he pulled into an underground parking garage and killed the engine. Are you okay? He asked, turning to Maya. She nodded, even though her hands were still shaking. Who were those men? Hired guns, Antonio said. Probably sent by the remnants of the Castellano family. They knew I was getting close and they must have been watching you too. A black SUV pulled into the garage. 4 men in FBI jackets got out, followed by a woman in her 50s with a stern expression. Agent Sarah Brennan, Antonio said. She's the one I've been working with. Brennan approached the car and Antonio handed her the ledger through the window. She flipped through it quickly, her eyes widening. This is it, she said quietly. This is everything we need. She looked at Maya. Miss Roberts, you and your brother are going to need protection until we can make arrests. We'll have agents outside your apartment and his school. Antonio will be placed in federal custody tonight for his own safety. Maya felt panic rise in her chest. What about Marcus? He's safe, Brennan said. We already have a team with him. Antonio looked at Maya, his expression softer than she had ever seen it. You did the right thing. Your father would be proud. Maya's eyes filled with tears. What happens to you now? I disappear, Antonio said simply. New name, new life. This is what I signed up for. Will I ever see you again? He hesitated. Probably not. But you'll be safe. And that's what matters. Brennan motioned for Antonio to step out of the car. He did, and 2 agents immediately moved to escort him away. But before he left, he turned back to Maya one last time. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For reminding me why I started this. For showing me that some people are still worth protecting. 3 months later, Maya stood in the kitchen of her apartment, pouring coffee and watching the morning news. The TV showed footage of federal agents arresting 23 people in coordinated raids across New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. The anchor's voice was almost triumphant. In what officials are calling the largest organized crime takedown in 2 decades, the FBI has dismantled what remained of the Castellano crime network. The arrests were made possible by evidence contained in a ledger hidden for 20 years by undercover agent Raymond Roberts. Maya turned off the TV. Her father's name had been cleared. The FBI had issued a formal statement acknowledging his service and his sacrifice. They had even offered her a settlement, enough money to go back to school and give Marcus a future that didn't involve struggling for every dollar. She looked at the framed photo on the counter, the one of her father holding her on his shoulders when she was 5. "I finished it, Dad," she whispered. Marcus came out of his room, already dressed for school. "You okay, sis?" She smiled. "Yeah, I'm okay." As Marcus grabbed his backpack and headed for the door, Maya noticed an envelope that had been slipped under it sometime during the night. No return address, no postmark, just her name written in careful handwriting. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper with 3 words, "You did good," and underneath, in smaller letters, "Stay safe, Maya." No signature, but she knew who it was from. She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her pocket. Then she locked the door, walked Marcus to school, and went to her first day of classes at the community college nursing program. Because some stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with survival. They end with the quiet strength of people who refuse to break. They end with a single mother walking into a classroom, carrying the weight of everything she's lost and everything she's fought for, and deciding that the best way to honor the people who protected her is to keep moving forward. Antonio DeLuca disappeared into the federal witness protection program. His name was erased. His face was forgotten. But the 47 convictions that resulted from his testimony and the ledger Maya's father hid brought down an empire built on fear and violence. And somewhere, in a small town under a new identity, a man who used to be a mob boss wakes up every morning and remembers the night he walked into a diner and met a waitress who reminded him that even people like him could still do the right thing. So here's the question worth asking. What would you have done if you were Maya? If a stranger walked into your life with a warning that sounded impossible, would you have believed him? Would you have trusted him? Or would you have walked away and hoped the danger wasn't real? Maya didn't have the luxury of hope. She had a younger brother to protect, a father's legacy to honor, and a choice to make between fear and courage. She chose courage. And because of that choice, 23 dangerous criminals are behind bars. A corrupt network spanning 2 states was destroyed, and a federal agent who died 20 years ago finally got the justice he deserved. But this story isn't just about the mafia or witness protection or hidden ledgers. It's about the moments when ordinary people are forced to do extraordinary things. It's about the people who walk into our lives unexpectedly and change everything. It's about the weight of secrets and the cost of truth. And it's about the fact that sometimes the most feared people in the world are the ones fighting the hardest to make things right, even if no one will ever know their names. Maya Roberts is back in school now, studying to become a nurse. Marcus is thriving, talking about colleges and scholarships. And somewhere, a man with a new name is living a quiet life, carrying the memory of a woman who showed him that redemption is possible even for people who thought they were beyond saving. Have you ever met someone who changed your life in a single conversation? Someone who appeared at exactly the right moment, even if you didn't realize it at the time? Think about the people in your life who showed up when it mattered. The ones who protected you, guided you, or simply reminded you that you were stronger than you thought. Because that's what this story is really about. Not criminals and ledgers and federal raids. It's about connection. It's about the way lives intersect in unexpected ways. And it's about the truth that even in the darkest places, there are still people willing to risk everything to do what's right. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of someone in your own life, share it. Subscribe for more true stories that reveal the hidden courage of ordinary people. And remember, the most powerful force in the world isn't fear. It's the decision to stand up anyway.